Kalispera, good evening, and welcome. Dear Ambassador, Ms. Charlotte Samlin, dear Minister Kostas Karamanlis, distinguished speakers, guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of the Greece-Sweden Sixth Business Forum of the Hellenic Swedish Chamber of Commerce. We have transformed our forum to adapt to COVID conditions, and therefore we have our virtual version. This is the first module of our three-module series of the original Business Forum. The Hellenic Swedish Chamber of Commerce looks to create a platform for bilateral cooperation between our two countries. Our chamber has been operating for 30 years, reaching 100 members, of which 33 are of Swedish entities, and with many having establishment of over 90 years in Greece. The Business Forum has been our most successful annual event, where we take up themes and issues relative to our two economies. Best practices and know-how from Sweden and Greece, governmental bodies and company representatives are brought into the panels to explore expertise and share knowledge. The Sixth Business Forum theme is Greece leaping into a sustainable future. A relevant topic and issue as Greece comes out of a recession and now dealing with a new global crisis of COVID. Our first module today is focused on sustainable public mobility. Healthy economic growth will come from real incorporation of sustainable business strategy for all corporations and governments. We all need to redefine our business strategies with recyclable concepts and smart infrastructures. The next two modules of our Business Forum, coming in the beginning of next year, will be Green Smart Cities and the Circular Economy. Most importantly, now I would like to give an appreciation to the sponsors of this event. Thank you to ABB, Combitrans, Intrum, Sarakakis Group of Companies, SKF, and Volvo Car Las. Our keynote speaker today is Minister Kostas Karamanlis, and along we have an interesting panel of speakers from Greece and abroad. We have focused to bring specialists from both countries to share, connect, and inspire new ways for Greece to leap into a sustainable future on the transport and mobility sector, and ready to exchange views and a journey of what they have seen in Sweden. Sweden has much to offer from experience in sustainability, digitalization, and engineering. Now, I would like to welcome to the virtual floor Her Excellency, Ambassador Charlotte Samlin.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Rania Patsiopoula. I would like to thank the board for the excellent work you are doing and for choosing such an important and highly topical issue for the first module of the Business Forum. I would also like to extend a special thanks to Minister Karamanlis for being here with us today. And I would like to start to say a couple of words about climate change and policies to tackle it. I think it's fair to say that governments around the world are struggling to address climate change. They must create predictability and durable conditions for the private sector, enabling businesses to effectively contribute to the transition towards a sustainable world. If you allow me, I would like to mention a decision that was taken by the Swedish Parliament. It's an agreement called the Climate Policy Framework. It includes a climate act, climate targets, and the establishment of a climate policy council. This framework is key for the business and the Swedish society as it provides long-term conditions to address climate change. And this Climate Act entered into force 2 years ago, and it specifies how work is supposed to be carried out. The government is obliged to present a climate report every year. Every 4th year, the government must adopt a climate policy action plan for how the goals are to be met. And the Climate Policy Council provides an independent assessment of how the overall policy presentation by the government is compatible with the climate goals. I would like to mention the 3 broad climate targets that we have in Sweden. And the first one is that by 2045, Sweden will have net zero emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and should thereafter achieve a negative emission. Secondly, greenhouse gas emissions in the sectors that will be covered by the EU regulations on the division of responsibilities should by 2030 be at least 63% lower than the emissions in 1990. And 10 years later, the aim is that these emissions should be at least 75% lower than in 1990. And the third climate target, which is relevant for today's discussion, is that greenhouse gas emissions from domestic transport will be reduced by at least 70% by 2030 compared to 2010. If we look at the transport sector, I think we all share a common challenge. Our transport sector is still too dependent on fossil fuel. As cities become more populated, policy instruments and behavior need to change. We need smarter and more efficient technical solutions. Today's forum will address public mobility. The question is, how can we handle increased urbanization that requires sustainable, accessible, and efficient public transport? I think this is a highly pertinent question here in Athens. We are all aware of the importance that public transport could play for the city's economic growth, urban functions, the prosperity of individuals, the public sector, and the industries. I think that Greek-Swedish cooperation in this sector could be very fruitful. My country has a long history of sustainable transport, and Swedish companies are strongly committed to offering cutting-edge solutions across all modes of mobility. In addition to biofuels, Sweden has dedicated resources to the development and implementation of electric and autonomous car technologies, batteries, charging infrastructure, and fuel cells. We also work very hard to increase the share of people who travel by public transport. I'm sure that the speakers here today will share their experience and examples from projects. Finally, once again, the timing of this discussion could not be more optimal. The EU Recovery and Resilience Fund, that is also called Next Generation EU, will hopefully be adopted soon. This fund will make a substantial support package available to Greece. The aim is to use this fund for the green and digital transformation. For the transport sector, this transformation will in many cases need to use transitional technology, like hybrid solutions, until all the planning and development of full electrification can be implemented. The advantage with hybrid solutions is that they are less polluting and can be used until an extensive infrastructure is in place. I hope that many EU countries will make good use of the Recovery Fund and place the green and digital investments in sustainable European solutions. With these words, I would like to thank you for giving me the floor, and I'm very much looking forward to listen to the interventions following. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. And now we will proceed to a small video break, and then we will continue with our keynote speaker, Minister Kostas Karamanlis.
SKF Trax monitoring unit wirelessly sends wheel and health updates to an onboard gateway that transmits the data to the SKF cloud or a third-party cloud, as well as an app on the driver's smartphone. The data is then sent to the fleet maintenance location. If wheel end health starts to deteriorate, the app alerts the fleet maintenance center and the driver long before failure occurs so that timely repairs can be scheduled. If a thermal event is detected, the fleet will be alerted immediately so that the driver can be notified to pull over and avoid catastrophic failure. If a vibration problem is detected, it will send a notification to the fleet long before failure would typically occur. This advanced notification would be several thousand miles before failure. This allows the fleet to keep the vehicle in operation while scheduling service well enough in advance in order to maintain fleet uptime. Combined with SKF's TFO or trouble-free operation parts warranties available for up to 7 years, the SKF Trax offers fleets an unmatched level of wheel end reliability. So how much could it save a fleet in the real world? Consider this real-life example based on a 5,000 trailer fleet. In this scenario, the SKF Trax could slash on planned maintenance and downtime costs by as much as $3.6 million annually. And it can predict and help avoid a thermal event, which can cost up to $1.5 million per event. For more information about the SKF Trax, contact your sales representative from SKF, the bearing company that's not trying to sell you parts, but a solution to help lower a fleet's total cost of operation.
Αυτό δεν είναι απλά ένα όχημα. Είναι μια εμπειρία. Μια κατάσταση τέλειας ροής και ανέμελης κίνησης. Οι δρόμοι ανήκουν σε εσάς, τους ποδηλάτες. Μπείτε σήμερα στον ασφαλή κόσμο της Volvo με 5 χρόνια εγγύηση και επιπρόσθετα ωφέλη.
Welcome back. Now I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Ms. Alexandra Cassini, journalist from the Kathimerini newspaper.
Good afternoon.
Alexandra.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you all, and thank you very much for joining us. It goes without saying that it is a great honor for me to be here, and I really look forward for this discussion on sustainable public mobility to get started. After welcoming all our speakers, even though you can't see them yet all, I would like to welcome the Minister of Infrastructure and Transport, Mr. Kostas Karamanlis, who has been handling a rather difficult situation in terms of public transportation, both in Athens and Thessaloniki. It is well known that the public transportation fleet has aged here in Greece. Since the Ministry of Transportation is about to publish a tender for the procurement of new buses that will renew the fleet of the two major Greek cities, we are very interested in listening to what are the challenges of this project. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me begin by thanking you for the invitation and congratulating you for the flawless organization. The Hellenic Swedish Chamber of Commerce continues its hard work to promote the dialogue and discussion over crucial issues of our time, but also to enhance the Greek-Swedish bilateral partnership and cooperation. Although it may seem that our two people diverge in terms of core characteristics, habits, and culture, one might say in general, if we look into the matter more thoroughly, we will find out that our relationship is based on friendship, is based on mutual appreciation, and whenever we have worked together, we have been quite productive and efficient. As we all know, this pandemic has disrupted and transformed not only the global economy, but our daily life also. It is therefore, I believe, very important to have an open dialogue on how to improve our everyday life and promote new and innovative ideas. The Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure has a vast scope, and due to the nature, and may I say the complexity of our projects, things do not change overnight. Structural and innovating changes, especially in the public sector, take time. This is why the topic of the 6th Business Forum, Greece, Sweden, is of major importance. Sustainable public mobility has a key role in our planning. Free movement of people in a safe and, may I say, a sustainable environment is fundamental. The same goes for the safeguard of urban mobility and, more specifically, of public transport and its users. New technological trends are drastically changing the mobility sector. They overturn traditional models of transport and create new opportunities and ways in mobility means and services. In this new environment, please allow me to underline the importance of electrifications. Since day one of our administration, we are working very hard for the implementation of a very comprehensive plan of electrification in Greece, emphasizing also on public transport. A top priority of our government, and this is very high up in our Prime Minister's agenda, which is the future, because let's not kid ourselves, electrification is the future. Where do we stand today? The shift to a more environmental friendly technology is a challenge, especially when it comes to transport, especially when it comes here in Greece. Transport accounts from approximately 1/3 of global energy consumption and 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. The EU objective, as we all know, is to become climate neutral by 2050. However, I have to say that electrification was not in the previous government's agenda. It was not a high priority. Running, therefore, a little late, we here at the Ministry of Transport have laid out a plan on electrification based on 4 pillars. First, renewal of our vehicle fleet. Currently, here in Greece, we have one of the oldest vehicle fleets in Europe. We have set, together with the Ministry of Environment, an ambitious but feasible goal. By 2030, 1 out of 3 vehicles to be using electric engines. Private use vehicles. We need to give major incentives for buying or for leasing electrified vehicles, both for cars and motorcycles. Corporate and professional cars, equivalent incentives for taxis, trucks, and the renewal of vehicle fleet of companies. And of course, as Mrs. Kassimi mentioned, buses. We are about to launch a tender for new buses in Athens and Thessaloniki. And a big part of this new fleet will be electrified. We already have a pilot program here in Athens where we have a number of electrical buses that are in use. We want to adapt this new approach of electrifications to our city's needs, to our city's characteristics. Second pillar, infrastructure for easy and accessible charging. Electrification without easy and accessible charging is inconceivable. Our goal, therefore, is to create a network for the development of public and private infrastructure stations. This would cover the whole highway network of Greece, but we also have charging stations in public and private locations. This year, the charging stations will approach 2,000 points. In 2025, 12,000 points, and by 2030, the goal is to reach 25,000 charging stations. Moreover, our ministry is planning to seek funding from the EU Partnership Agreement for the Infrastructure Development of Alternative Funds. Third pillar, the thorough analysis and overview of the electrification market, which is a new market. All charging stations infrastructure will be registered into a special electrification infrastructure registry, which will be able to provide real-time data, real-time information to users, such as availability of charging stations, costs, and ways of payment. Fourth pillar, preparing the transport sector for the new era. In order to get into the electrification era, it is necessary to fully modernize our services to all users. Therefore, we have to regulate the licensing and the functioning of repair and maintenance workshops of electric vehicles, as well as the specialized technicians qualifications licensing. I am personally confident that through our comprehensive policy, electrification will be here in Greece sooner rather than later, part of our daily life. Our plan is taking into account all urban mobility dimensions: public transport, multimodal transport, road safety, stations and traffic flow operations, urban supply chain, alternative fuels, micromobility, and smart intelligent transport systems. Last but not least, let me touch upon an issue which is very important and where Sweden is among the leading countries in the world and in Europe, and this has to do with road safety. Road safety is a top priority of our government. It is inconceivable that in the 21st century, we mourn hundreds or thousands of human lives every year due to road accidents. I take pride in our comprehensive plan of improving road safety. We have spotted more than 7,000 dangerous points all over our primary and secondary national road network, which with the European Investment Bank's funding, we will very soon start fixing. In closing, let me mention that in this changing world, governments should promote and prioritize the technological innovation through legislative initiatives, granting incentives and investing in infrastructure, with innovation being a top priority. Today's discussion is, of course, overshadowed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The situation, both in my country and abroad, is difficult, but we will eventually overcome this harsh period, and let's hope that very soon we will return back to normality. It is in our hands, it is in our reach to aim for a better quality of life in today's polluted urban cities. And all the issues I briefly touched upon today are crucial if we want to achieve a better quality of everyday life in our big cities. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish every success in this forum. I will be waiting with great interest for its conclusions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karamanlis. I am sure we will hear many interesting things concerning both technologies, new technological trends and new opportunities that we can learn from here. At this point, I would like to address Professor Yannis Golias, who, as the chairman of Athens Urban Transportation Organization, known to us Greeks as OASA, will share his expertise on the challenges of urban mobility in Greece, which I am sure are not few. The day-to-day problems, the perspectives, and possible solutions are few of the things we would like to hear. Furthermore, how can one ensure sustainable public mobility these days? Professor Golias, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Kassimi, Minister of Infrastructure and Transport, Your Excellency, Ambassador of Sweden in Greece, dear Chairman of the Hellenic Swedish Chamber of Commerce, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by thanking the Hellenic Swedish Chamber of Commerce and the Embassy of Sweden in Greece for giving me the opportunity to participate in this very interesting module referring to sustainable public mobility. This is a very crucial topic for big cities of today and of the future. Development of sustainable urban mobility improves access to market and job opportunities, to education, to healthcare services, to leisure, the things in general citizens need in everyday life. In my intervention, I'll try to bring forward some important issues concerning the challenges and the opportunities in sustainable public transport in Greek cities, as I was asked. It's only, of course, natural that due to my participation in the board of the Athens Urban Transport Organization, or ASA, I will refer in the sequel, I'll concentrate on issues and interventions we are planning in Athens. However, rest assured that similar problems and ways of tackling them apply also to the other main Greek cities. I'll start with the statement that public transport should be accessible. And when discussing public transport, accessibility can be categorized into two main perspectives. On the one hand, accessibility is characterized by the length of the network, number of the stations, frequency of operations, and the seat capacity that should be designed to ensure a satisfactory time for ride and satisfactory quality for ride. With about 260 bus itineraries, including more than 15,000 daily scheduled bus trips, and with a metro network of about 85 kilometers and a tram network of about 30 kilometers, OASA claims a satisfactory accessibility, which serves more than 3 out of 10 trips under normal conditions. It goes without saying that, of course, OASA is constantly planning the improvement of the accessibility to increase this modal speed percentage. But on the other hand, accessibility relates to the effort needed to understand the transport system, be informed about timetables, and understand the fare system. This information should be given in an easy and understandable way. In this context, by use of advanced technology, OASA has developed an application for which potential passengers can be informed of the public transport connections with other transport modes, together with the corresponding timetables. Thus, they can schedule beforehand their door-to-door trip chain and travel time. Furthermore, OASA is operating an advanced automatic fare purchase system that, among others, allows frequent passengers to acquire their card remotely. And of course, OASA is also working towards additional ways of more advanced direct electronic fare payment. The second issue I'd like to bring forward during this short intervention is that public transport should have the ability to be demand responsive. Intelligent transport systems can nowadays be applied for the efficient management of urban mobility and interoperability. Traffic and travel data processing can provide information, assistance, and dynamic control of transport. In this context, in OASA, we have developed an advanced real-time system for the monitoring of all vehicles, which gives also real-time information for vehicle arrivals, both at terminals and at main stops. This vehicle monitoring system, combined with the automatic system of OASA for fare collection and validation, gives affluent information concerning itineraries and passenger demand. The issue here is how to exploit all this affluent information that can be evaluated in a short time to give directions for possibly required fleet rescheduling. Of course, on an extended public transport network like that of OASA, it's obvious that real-time interventions are limited to local small range changes. However, this extended database can be exploited through big data analysis and artificial intelligence to plan in a relatively short period more important interventions in the network under special unexpected conditions that persist. This proved indeed to be a very important tool in dealing with the extraordinary demands during the coronavirus period, during which OASA has to proceed to multiple consecutive itinerary and timetable changes on the basis of consecutive lockdown changes influencing transport demand. I'd not like to close demand responsiveness without referring to another issue, which under the circumstances may look like a pie in the sky, but which we are still evaluating in OSI. I'm talking for providing a demand response on a demand responsive basis, a public transport service in areas of low passenger demand, or on the basis of mobility as a service concept. These systems require passengers to request a journey by booking online with a central dispatcher who determines the journey options available and take advantage of fleet telematics technology. Now, a final issue, last but not least, in my intervention is the role of public transport towards greener, that is, cleaner cities. This role too can be categorized in two main perspectives. First one has to do with the ever-growing congestion, which has negative economic, health, and environmental impacts. The use of private car for commuting to the city centers should be discouraged through measures that increase time and cost of the car trips so that the use of public transport becomes preferable. Road capacity for private cars should be decreased and should be dedicated on-ground public transportation, bicycles, and widened pedestrian zones. It is in this context that OSI is operating a 25 kilometers network of bus lanes, which is constantly increasing on the basis of achieving bus speed increase in the main traffic corridors. Furthermore, we are in a continuous cooperation with the Athens Traffic Signal Department for ensuring right-of-way in important road access for buses and the tram. The second perspective of the public transport role for cleaner cities has to do with the environmental objective of replacing the public transport fleet with modern vehicles powered by cleaner fuels or technologies. Clean buses in urban areas offer reduction in emissions of greenhouse gases, air pollutants, and noise, and by moving on quietly and smoothly, make public transport more attractive. In this context, a public procurement tender will be announced by the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport, as the Minister said before, in the very near future, for the replacement of a big number of existing buses with low-emission vehicles, of which a considerable percentage will be zero emission. The tender will terminate a longer than 10-year period with no fleet replacement. A second tender for a similar number of new buses will take place in the second semester of 2021, the vast majority of which will be zero-emission vehicles. I'd like to close with a statement which I have come through the years to believe firmly. A developed city is not a place where all people can afford a private car, but a place where all people consciously prefer to use public transport. Thank you for your attention.
Professor Gouras, thank you very much. And we also look forward to the new buses running through the city routes. Now I would like to introduce to you Marcin Seredinsky, who is the Head of Innovation and Research at the eBus Competence Center in Luxembourg. He's responsible for R&D projects combining electromobility with intelligent transportation systems. He will get us acquainted with the most important technological trends and solutions in terms of sustainable mobility, giving us a few examples. I suspect he will share with us a few very interesting facts as well on electrification and hybrid technology. Mr. Seredinsky, please, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency, dear Ambassador, dear listeners, it's my pleasure to be here. Good evening. And well, I will speak in the next few minutes about all the main issues that we need to tackle in the mobility scene. I hope you can see my screen. So there are mainly three big issues when it comes to mobility. The first one is the noise pollution, which has huge impact on the health. Second is the climate change, which of course means basically CO2 emissions. And the last one is the energy consumption. And then, of course, the question arises, what can we do with that, given that we have certain types of technologies being available on the market? I try to summarize all in this one single slide. It's not easy, but the answer is relatively easy. So the number one and only choice when it comes to tackle those issues are full electric vehicles. And they can lead to very huge reductions when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, which specific reductions depend on how clean is the energy from the grid. And of course, they are 100% electric, meaning that they really reduce the noise pollution. Now, the second best choice, and in fact, the only second best choice, are part-time electric vehicles. Well, they are typically called full hybrid vehicles, but I don't like that name. That's a name made for engineers, by engineers for engineers. It's not very clear. So I call them part-time electric, and it's often called because they spend big degree of the duty in electric mode, and typically it's between 30 and 50% of time. So full electrics and hybrids, they basically share the same heart and soul, which is full-size electric machine. So this is really the core of these big benefits. And of course, someone might ask, why don't we go to full electric vehicles? And the answer is simple. So the evidence from European cities which started electrification is clear that to make a large-scale, robust, and cost-efficient transition to electric vehicles, it needs to be a long, gradual process that requires really a good multi-stakeholder partnership to make it right, in order to do it in a good way and a cost-efficient and robust way. So this means that there will always a second type of buses to be chosen when we can't because we can't go all electric at the same time. And this is why we need to look at the second choices, and among them, the second choice, we have full hybrid vehicles, which are those part-time electric vehicles. And just to give you some numbers, how much we can save when it comes to CO2 per year on the well-to-wheel basis. So I just took a specific buses driving in the town near Zurich, because we have very good data from there, from different manufacturers and different technologies. So in that specific case, a 18-meter diesel vehicle emits 142 tons of CO2 per year. Now, their full hybrid vehicle, which they are owning, reduces this by 50 tons, and this goes to 93 tons. So we are minus 50 tons per year per vehicle of CO2 emissions. Now, the electric vehicle, the reductions of electric vehicles are really depending on how clean is the grid. But in the worst case, it's still on the level of full hybrid vehicles. So it means we are at best, in the worst case, 93 tons, and the best case, we are at 0 when it comes to CO2 emissions. So I think the situation here is quite clear when it comes to the technologies that we are available. Now, there are a few other things already mentioned by the previous speaker. So there are some indirect benefits on the society environment coming from the electrification of public transport. So first of all, if we electrify those vehicles, it means we have more electric behavior for full electric vehicles and full hybrids. We make public transport more attractive. And by making this public transport more attractive, it means we have less people using cars. So we somehow create the model shift towards public transport. Less cars means less emissions from the cars. So these effects can be even greater than just looking per se at the vehicles. So we can say that electrification is just a means to get rid of cars, to have less cars on streets, but creating incentives, not by forcing the cars away. And the last but not least, I think very often overlooked thing is that the operational characteristics. So if we have a certain mix of technologies available in the city, then the benefits of these technologies, the societal and environmental benefits, really depend on where we put those vehicles. So it's very interesting, very important in the whole process of electrifying the cities to assign our best technologies in the routes where the benefits will be the greatest. And I'll give you a short example. If you have, for instance, a full hybrid vehicle, you put it on a high-speed route, which goes to the airport, so typically has 40 kilometers average speed, you will only get 10% reduction of the CO2 emissions. If you put it on the stop-and-go conditions, hilly conditions, then you can even go up to 40%. And pretty similar logic goes to full electric vehicles. So whenever first step is to going for electrified vehicles, and then the second step is really to go deeper into the operations via partnership to really understand where our technologies can really get the best benefits. And I think that's the few messages that I wanted to give in my speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seredensky. A very interesting and helpful, if I may say, experience of public transportation will be provided to us in a few minutes, coming from Roger Van Berg, the Senior Vice President of West Traffic, Public Transport Authority of West Sweden. Roger Van Berg is responsible for all operations as well as traffic and infrastructure development. He's also the chairperson of UITP Presscom, the President's Committee, which is responsible for UITP Global Work Program. Mr. Van Berg has more than 25 years of experience within the public transport section. Having been through electrifying West Sweden, Mr. Van Berg will be kind enough to share with us all the know-how he acquired through this procedure. He will talk to us about the implementation of 60 fully electric buses that actually started, a procedure that actually started from only 3 plug-in hybrids many years ago. Mr. Van Berg, if you may. Mr. Van Berg? We have a slight problem with the sound.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm going to speak about how we have proceeded to electrify our bus fleet. And just to put into context, Västtrafik is a public transport authority of West Sweden. We are responsible for all public transport in the area, in the region and in the cities, which means trains and trams and buses and ferries. We tender everything. All our operations are tendered, and we have about 355 million trips per year, or we had that before the pandemic. Of course, now it's much lower, but we, of course, expect to come back to that after the pandemic. We have very high and tough goals of climate goals. For example, on carbon dioxide, in Sweden, we have a national goal of reducing the carbon dioxide by 70% in the transport sector by 2030. We have already achieved that. Our goal is to reduce it by 90% by 2035. And today, basically, almost all our bus operation is running with a renewable fuel. So in order to reach these goals and other goals we have on the emissions, we have to electrify. And our plan that we have start to put into operation is to electrify all city traffic by 2030. And we move biogas. We have biogas today in a lot of our city traffic. We move that out to regional traffic, and for some parts where it's not possible to electrify and to have biogas, we will continue with liquid biofuels. And if you look at today, we already have 45% of our trips are electric. And of course, most of them are on train and trams, but more and more electric buses are taking its share. And by next Sunday, we will go over 60% of our trips will be electric when we introduce 146 new articulated full electric buses. So by next Sunday, we have a situation like this. This is our region in the western part of Sweden, with Gothenburg, Göteborg, there in the left, down left there, where it says 180. Then we will have 180 full electric buses, and we will have in a few other cities as well. And this is the start. And I'm now going to tell you how we have made this journey. We started for quite a long time ago. We started in 2011. With a project together with Volvo and together with our operator GS, Göteborgs Spårvägar, with a hyperbus project. And that was on an existing route. You see the dotted line on the screen there, 8 kilometer, but it's very hilly. On the both end, it's very hilly. and with steep hills, and quite a lot, of course, complain about noise by the residents. So we started with 3 plug-in hybrids there to test, and 2 charging stations in both ends. And actually, the residents were, after when we asked them what they thought about this, they noticed that it was much quieter, even if it was only 3 of 18 buses that were hybrids, electric hybrids. But from this project, we went further, and together with many stakeholders, we created a project called Electricity. That was together with Volvo and Ericsson. It was together with the city of Gothenburg and the region. It was also together with the universities and the region, of course. So there's a lot of stakeholders involved in this project, and that was to create a new route, a new line with fully electric, total electrified line with 7 hybrids, electric hybrids, and 3 fully electric buses. And this was the project started 2013, but the line was introduced by 2015. And that was, I would say, quite a success. We noticed, because it was a whole line electrified, we could ask the customers on board what they thought about it. And we got many times when we were on board, we got 100% customer satisfaction, which we never have had on any other line in Gothenburg. So they were very satisfied, especially on the noise level, but also because it was attractive, as the previous speaker talked about. And also the drivers were very satisfied. Of course, it was they thought it was better working conditions. Also, there was noise very important, but also that they felt proudness of being part of something new, something very attractive, and something good for the society. The next step in this was also to test 2 articulated buses on Route 16. We did that a couple of years after 2015. And from the experience of this Electricity project, we went on 2019 to introduce full electric buses in existing contracts. And we chose 4 contracts with different conditions, different geography, and so on, so we can test and learn from different situations. So one was in Gothenburg, where we had the Hyperbus project. That line we electrified. We electrified a whole city, a small city called Lidköping, for example. So that was a way to get even more experience of electric buses. And this was about 65, 67 buses that were introduced on these 4 different cities. And from all this experience that we got from these projects, and also from this introducing on a larger scale, we decided that the next big tender, when we tendered a part of Gothenburg bus traffic, as well as the 2 municipalities very, very close to Gothenburg, we decided to have it all fully electric, which means that on next Sunday, we will take another huge step when we put in 146 new articulated Volvo buses, full electric, in Gothenburg, Mölndal, and Partille. And that is, of course, a very big step. And I was thinking I was going to also talk a little about the challenges for this, but just so you can see because now it's not any longer any visions or projects. Now it's we're implementing it in full scale, which means that already at 2024, 2025, we will have about 600 electric buses. Most of the city traffic will be electric, and by 2030, everything will be electrified. So in the next coming big tenders, there will be electrification. One big tender is out right now. And the big challenges for this, I would say, is infrastructure, and has been mentioned by previous speakers a little about the infrastructure. There is, of course, very important, and it's a prerequisite that you have the power on the regional level and on the city level is enough, so the power grid. And if it's not, it takes quite a long time to fix that. So that's a very important part. But for us, we are very lucky that Gothenburg area has a very good situation for the power grid. But for us, the depots was a big challenge, and it's a big challenge. They have to be closer to the network than the depots we've had before, in order to not having to drive so much empty or to get to the network. And of course, to get electric power to the depot, and that is then we establish a lot of cooperation, of course, with the city for the location of the depots, but also with the energy company, the Gothenburg Göteborg Energi, Gothenburg Energy Company, that provide us with electricity, and that is, of course, takes also time, and we have to secure that we had that enough power to be able to have all these buses. We also have charging stations out at hubs and end stations, and that also a challenge, of course, with the city to have permits, and that because of course it's big things that are coming up in different areas and has to be able to look well good enough anyway, and to get power to them, and that is one common thing with introducing electric buses is that it is many stakeholders, much more stakeholders than in normal tender and the normal operation, and we have to have close cooperation. It is needed to have close cooperation with many to address these challenges, and it's important to not underestimate these challenges because they are quite big, and they all have to be addressed. So to conclude, we cannot lose sight of the climate crisis in a challenging time. The mobility for the future is to travel sustainable. And there will be different solutions in different situations in order to reach our high climate goals. Thank you very much.
Mr. Vanberg, thank you very much. And as you mentioned, electrification can definitely not exist without batteries and the proper charging infrastructure. So that takes me to our next speaker. And who more appropriate to join us now, the e-mobility infrastructure manager for ABB Greece, Mr. Nikos Kallikantarakis. He leads a team responsible for acceleration of ABB's electric vehicle charging solutions businesses and the incubation of the electric vehicle charging infrastructure in Greece. Mr. Kallikantarakis, please help us charge our batteries.
Thank you, Ms. Kassimi. I have prepared also a presentation, just a minute. All right, I'm responsible for the e-mobility infrastructure for ABB Greece. And I will start my presentation with the questions, why mobility is necessity. The Paris Agreement's long-term temperature goal is to keep the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius, recognizing that this would sustainably reduce the risk and impact of climate change. World is already 5 years later than this agreement, 1 degree Celsius warmer. To keep the increase of the temperature on acceptable limits, the global carbon pollution would have to be cut by 45% by 2030 and come down to zero by 2050. 2/3 of global carbon pollution comes from transport and energy generation sector. This is the reasons that everybody have to drive electric cars and charge them by clean renewable energy. Let's see what means by electric vehicle. Pure electric cars are cars without conversion engine, has only the electric engine and batteries, ion lithium batteries, and a small charger in order to charge the vehicle. Except of the standard infrastructures for low power, there are other which we can take bigger power and named DC fast charging stations and are shared with hundreds of users. If we are talking now for a bus has 10 times the batteries which a small car has. That means that we have needs 10 times the power to maintain comparable charging time for the bus. Here is the solutions that are coming from ABB, the global leader of EV infrastructures. ABB has a decade in proven technology, sold in over 82 countries. And let's see in a glance our products. We have the solutions in order to charge for a small car on which we need some small quantity of kilowatt till to a heavy vehicle charging it with till to 600 kilowatt. ABB has several products in order to serve all these vehicles, and also is responsible for the connectivity, which means the remote diagnostics, the payment, and the building management of these units. The grid integrations, that means compact substations, transformers, switchgear, and service and maintenance, spare parts, and service and training of third parties. Let's see some different solutions of charging. By talking for the buses, there is the overnight plug-in charging. After operations, most buses will go back to the depot, and this offers an ideal moment to charge the bus overnight. Average parking time is between 6 to 8 hours. Depending on the battery capacity of the buses, charging power could be between 30 to 150 kilowatt. Chargings can be done one charger per bus, or even combined one charger per 3 buses. This is not named sequential charging. For these chargers, ABB has different solutions. For the overnight charging, that means long time, 2 to 8 hours, we can support with 20 to 150 kilowatt the vehicles, or for short time, 15 to 30 minutes with higher power, 175 to 350 kilowatt. Another solutions in order to help the buses is to serve them and give them additional power during the route. This is, we can succeed on this with the opportunity charging. For the opportunity charging, on which the power should be very big for a small period, we need we cannot do this with a cable. So we're using something like a robotic head named pantograph. And there is the pantograph down. It's a system coming from the infrastructure to the bus, or pantograph up. It's coming from the bus, the connection from the bus to infrastructure. Our solutions in opportunity charging are for big hours, for big times, 2 to 8 hours with lower power, 50 to 150 kilowatts, or for short times, 5 to 15 minutes with high power, 150 to 600 kilowatts. This is the overview of all our product portfolio, which could be even by cabling the buses to the infrastructures, or with the pantograph up or down. Some other factors that we have to pay attention in selecting battery charging. If the buses has a length about 24 meters and the batteries inside the buses are 70 to 130 kilowatt, then we need a lot of infrastructures during the route, and big power coming through this infrastructure to the bus. Better solution with less infrastructures during the route is if the buses are having 100 to 300 kilowatt batteries inside. And the other solution is to the bus to have inside big batteries, 250 to 600 kilowatt hours, and charging them only on the depot. Other factors in selecting battery chargings could be the fleet size, the quality of the charger, which must be based on very demanding standards. For instance, chargers with bad ripple current can reduce the battery lifetime a lot, could reduce to 2 years from 10. Other factors is the safety parameters, power demand impact, capital cost versus total cost of ownership, real estate, and many others. We must refer also the future-proof charging solutions, which means that the civil works must be prepared for future higher power and easily upgradable, the system to be upgradable in the field with modularity, and we have the capability to charge more buses as fleet size increases during the years. Why to choose ABB? ABB is a really experienced company in this field, has over 13,000 DC fast chargers globally, hundreds of sites installed, thousands of commissioning, participation in standard committees, industry coalitions, heavily investments in the market. So is a leader to EV world. We have many success stories. Just to refer here, a big project on Hamburger with 110 bus lines connected over 921 kilometers per day, carrying 213 million passengers per year. And the plan is to be 100% emission-free by 2020. Many others success stories refers here, the Ville of Luxembourg, Ministry of Sustainable Development and Infrastructure in Luxembourg. We have also two projects on Sweden, Torvalla and Jokoping, and in general, many cities in other countries, like here in Norway, or in Ariba in Netherlands, in Belgium, in Namur and Charleroi, in Great Britain, Brassfield and Birmingham Airport, and many others. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Kalikantzarakis, thank you very much. And now I think we can proceed to the most, or at least my most favorite part of this this business forum, where we start our discussion. And I would like to call Mr. Gollas, Mr. Seredinsky, Mr. Vamberg, and Mr. Kalikantzarakis to join me. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to ask Mr. Gollas, what do you consider as the greater challenge of OASA today?
Well, taking into account the special conditions under which we are facing, which is the coronavirus demands, the main challenge really, the short-term direct challenge is to be in the position to react to the changes of demand in a way that OASA was not used to do it before, and so cope with the demand that produces perhaps high occupancies in certain lines, which we have to change. And of course, to see how we can redistribute our fleet for the best of the demand as it evolves during the lockdown period. Now, if you go for, not for the short term, for the one that we have till it's perhaps March, April.
If I may just add in short terms, when do you think that the OASA will be fully ready to face this actual day-to-day challenge?
Well, actually, we're improving all of the time and constantly the situation. Of course, no matter how much buses you have or how many vehicles you have in the metro and the tram, there would be a case where you could have occupancy that exceeds perhaps the standard you'd like to have. Now, our effort really is to bring down these percentages of, let's say, in quotes, failure of the system in rates which are less than 3 or 2%. And this is actually our trend. We were very near to this target just before the new lockdown started, and we really believe that when the situation will start up again, we will be in the position to face to achieve this target. Taking into account also that we'll have more buses in the routes and we'll have better scheduling of our timetables.
Mm-hmm. And in addition,
for perhaps longer term targets, I think the main target is really to change of the fleet. The minister referred to it. It's one of our priorities. We haven't changed any buses for the last more than 10 years. I think this is a record, perhaps a world record for a city like Athens and of course Thessaloniki. Now, we have a lot of use of changing the fleet towards clean vehicles, clean buses, and of course, mainly to zero-emission buses, which are actually the electric vehicles. We already have a project going on with a pilot project with electric buses, which we're testing in the network of Athens, because as also Mr. Van Berg has showed to us, it's difficult to start and then perhaps it's easier to continue. So we have to be very careful at the beginning, see how we proceed, what are the buses we need, what is the infrastructure we need, where we need it, and then speed up with electric buses that sooner or later would cover the vast majority of the fleet of OASA.
Other than electric buses, are you also considering hybrid technology? The part-time electric buses, as Mr. Sherdinsky called them?
Yes, we are considering also hybrid buses. We're also considering hybrid plug-in buses, which are very near to electrical buses. Hybrid buses actually are not clear buses according to EC. So this is a drawback for those buses. But on the other hand, emissions of these buses are much lower than the ordinary diesel buses, and also you have a lot of saving in fuel. So we are also considering whether in the mixture of the new buses we're going to tender for, there will be hybrid buses and also CNG buses, of course electric buses. So everything is open and we're very near to finalize our decision, and the ministry will proceed with the tender.
I was very interested to hear that West Sweden will be fully electrified by 2030. So, Mr. Golias, addressing you again, how long do you think it would take Athens to fully electrify the public transportation system?
Well, if the country succeeds it by 230, then definitely OSA will also succeed it by 230.
Okay, thank you very much. If anyone wants to add anything to the questions, I asked Mr. Golias, but I know they're actually referring to OASA. So, Mr. Sherdinsky, I would like to come to you. You referred to part-time electric vehicles as the second best choice. That's how you mentioned it in your presentation. I understand their benefit may be even more than that of purely electric buses. Is it that way, or are hybrid technology buses just a step towards electrification, pure electrification?
So the full hybrid vehicles, which we should not consider with the mild hybrids, because sometimes these are confused. The full hybrid vehicles are only, let's say, a traditional transition step. So long term, in 10 years, nobody is going to buy anything but electric vehicles. But the reason why they are going to be purchased or need to be purchased is because they offer a lot of benefits coming from the electrification, from the fact that being part-time electrics, without all the constraints related to charging. So they are, from the operational perspective, they are like diesel or CNG vehicles. So we don't need to have any electrified dispatching or depot management, which is dedicated to electrified vehicles. So this is very, let's say, big advantage of those vehicles being implemented. So from the passenger perspective, they have a lot of benefits. They are electric in the bus stops, etc. When it comes to climate change, that's something, of course, not directly linked to improving life in the cities. The benefits of full hybrid technology is that they can really reduce, according to, let's say, average data is 25%, but in some cases even more. So that's really big number. And when we compare it to full electrics, of course, full electrics will be much better there, assuming that we have clean energy. So in case of Sweden or France, we'll probably be able to reduce by 100% the reductions. But if we are in countries where the grid is not as clean as in these countries, then the reductions coming with electric vehicles, they will be closer or better than hybrid vehicles. So the gap is really increasing with the cleaner electricity. So that's why electric vehicles are becoming more and more interesting over time when the grid is being clean. And just a small comment to the plug-in hybrid, because the plug-in hybrid were being mentioned. I think the plug-in hybrid is kind of technology that is going away in the market, because the plug-in hybrid technology, to make sense, needs to have high power charging. So once you have high power charging infrastructure, it's really better to use full electric vehicles there. So I would say that the market goes to a solution where you have only full electrics or full hybrids. So when you have your charging infrastructure, it should be really prioritized to use it for the full electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Are there specific characteristics for cities that can introduce and have the most benefits of part-time electric vehicles for the public transportation, or do they?
Yeah, I mean, so the benefits, I mean, so there are some conditions when we only want to have full electric vehicles. So if you have really slow average line, the line which is, let's say, the average operating speed of 10 kilometers per hour, you should go pure electric. That's no question there. But of course, then this is a very rare case, and there are some lines which, most of the lines have higher operating speed, and the conditions which favor, let's say, electrified vehicles, which means hybrids and electrics, are lines which are hilly. And let's say we have speed operating conditions with the average speed more than 14, 15 kilometers. So that's where the recovered energy is going to be much above the average. So I would say the hilliness and bit higher average speed is something that is very good for vehicles which have full-size electric machine, meaning full hybrids.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Vanberg, I'm still in shock by the fact that your region is going to be purely electrified by 2030. How difficult, I would like to ask, how difficult is it to purely electrify a whole region? You did mention a few aspects, and I would like to stand upon the fact that you mentioned that there are many stakeholders, which makes it a little difficult. And especially for the Greek reality, it might be a little challenging. So other than time-consuming as a procedure, how difficult can it be?
I didn't hear the last thing you said there, but you talked about the stakeholders.
Yes, and in terms of procedure, how difficult can it be? Because if you have to have many stakeholders joining one certain project, it's not easy, especially in Greece. Definitely not easy.
No, and it isn't easy. I mean, it's we have never before spoken to energy company, for example, and they haven't spoken to us. I mean, we don't know their everyday problems, and they don't know ours.
So it was a chance for you to make new friends.
Yeah, new friends, but also to understand. I mean, things that we maybe think is easy is not so easy, or there might be laws that we don't understand, know at all about. So that is a challenge when it's so new, so totally different from what we used to do. Then the city. I mean, of course, we have a lot of cooperation with the city before as well, but it is more challenging with. That we need to have depots. We were not, as an authority before, we were not involved in depots. The operators solve that, but because of electrification and also because of biogas, we need to control depots. So, and that is a long, it takes a long time to get all the permits and to get the decision where to put them and so on. So there is a lot of challenges
involved in Sweden as well.
Pardon?
So there is some bureaucracy involved in Sweden as well.
Yes, it is. Definitely. So that is a big challenge, but then also the challenges that I said. I think the the power that is needed and the depots are the big physical infrastructure challenges. That takes time.
Mm-hmm. And thank you very much, Mr. Kalikantzarakis. How much time do you think that it would take for Athens to be ready for full electrification in terms of infrastructures, of course? Theoretically speaking, always.
In terms of infrastructure, there is no problem. I want to add something in your previous remarks that maybe we have to use, except of the pure electric vehicle, also hybrid vehicles. As Mr. Golias told us, we have one of the oldest fleet in Europe in buses. That means that we have a really big lifetime for the buses. So if we add an intermediate type of buses, the hybrid types, then in order to have pure electrified buses will take 20 or 30 years. I believe that we have to go directly to pure electric buses, and I can assure you that from the side of the infrastructure, there is no problem. We can do everything.
Mm-hmm. And if you personally, theoretically speaking, again, if you owned a bus and used it every day as your personal vehicle, what charging solution would you choose?
Here we have to pay attention to two things. Batteries are consumable. So are consumables. If we invest a lot in batteries, then we have to pay the change of the batteries when the lifetime of the batteries reach at the end. If we have smaller batteries, we need to invest more money to the infrastructures. So we must find the balance. If we will have buses with big batteries just for the depot charging, or smaller batteries, and also we will use opportunity charger in the middle of the route.
So I understand we have to wish a lot of luck to Mr. Golias, since the project, the ongoing project is rather tricky and difficult. I would like to thank you all very much for your very, very interesting presentations. It was really, really interesting to listen to slightly different points of view of a similar issue, of the same issue actually. And it is very fulfilling to see how both countries, Greece and Sweden, can actually cooperate, and we can learn many things from Swedish practices, and hopefully Sweden can learn a few things from us as well. Thank you very much, and I would like to call Ms. Patsiopoulou.
Yes, hello. Thank you, everyone. Excellent presentations and really relevant information. I believe we all enjoyed it very much, and it was an excellent panel. So really look forward to putting some of this into life, what we saw and discussed today, and wish the best to the efforts of the Greek government also. Thank you very much, Mr. Wallenberg from Sweden and Mr. Sedinsky from Belgium, right? So we hope to see you live one day here in Greece, and we can have a follow-up after this COVID lockdown period goes away. And Alexandra Kassimi, thank you very much for your excellent moderation. And Mr. Kalikantzarakis also for your presentation. It was really good. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say. I think we're good on time, and yeah, really very proud of this first forum. It's our first virtual forum, and it's sad, of course, we cannot have more people around us today, but we have quite a large audience watching today. and it's running live streaming too on the social channels. So I think you did an excellent job today. Thank you very much for participating. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.